It's the question that drives us. It's the question that brought you here. So plug in, free your mind. Welcome to Echoes of Eternity.
We go to work one boring Monday, sliding into the next, with little variation from week to week. A moment of light here and there, an interesting hobby, a family vacation, a new relationship. But quickly, our lives return to mundane, and all we can do is hope for an adventure. But what if real-life adventures are possible and available to you right now? The adventure mindset is a growth-oriented way of seeing and thinking. It accepts and seeks to experience new things outside of our comfort zone and current knowledge. It's the ability to see obstacles and problems as opportunities for learning. It's the view that life is just one big trip and we're all travelers in it. Our guest today has café hopped across Eastern Europe, went skiing in Austria, tanned on the beaches of Thailand. The list of destinations is endless. From diving in the ocean to jumping out of a plane, she truly is the epitome of adventure. If she's not on a plane, she's spending time with family and friends or chilling with her dog. I present to you Harshika Shantilal. Welcome to the show, Harshika.
Thank you so much, Shamil. It's such a pleasure being here, and thank you for reaching out. I am so honored to be part of this.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time as well. So, to kick us right off, your most recent trip was in Spain, right?
Correct.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? Either you're going to convince someone that's been contemplating a trip to Spain or, confirm their worst fears.
Or I think just planning a trip on its own to anywhere is such a good idea, regardless of where the country is. But Spain was fantastic. We had a wedding for one of our friends, which turned out to be from maybe a week's affair to a 3 weeks affair. So it was stunning. We went through the whole of southern Spain. We started in Ibiza. We worked our way all the way through to Madrid. So Nerja, Fringiliana. Oh, the list is endless.
That's
but
incredible.
it was so amazing. I think the food, the people, just the whole atmosphere. I think God sprinkled a little bit extra in Spain than he intended to. That's unfair. No, but it was really, really nice. We met up with so many friends, but we were there. So literally at every single stop, we had somebody with us. So we had a familiar face. And I think that was really amazing.
How we define adventure is different for all of us, right? So when you hear the word adventure, what's the first thing that sort of springs to mind for you?
So adventure, to me, it's just to seek out a new experience. It doesn't have to be something, exhilarating and jumping out of a plane. It's something that you can go off a beaten pathway into, it just to break away from the mundane. It doesn't have to be something that's like expensive or loud. It's just something different to what your normal routine looks like.
Yes, just something new that you haven't experienced before, and it doesn't have to be, like you say, something grand, right?
Yes, almost breaking away from like our mundane routine, and thinking patterns.
Well, that's brilliant.
Definitely.
It's funny. So when I was thinking of this question, the first thing that came to my mind was the beach, but but it could be because I haven't been there in a long time. But I think I also take it for granted the small experiences that are new for me at home, and I don't always see that as adventure when really that is adventure, right?
It is. For me particularly, my schedule is like super busy all the time. I practically live out of my suitcase. But for me, adventure is literally just being at home in my PJs the whole day, because I never get to do that. Having like cheesecake for breakfast. I've been trying to convince my family how it's such a healthy meal for breakfast.
That sounds incredible.
My nephews just shut me down. But it's just something to break away from my normal pattern. And as soon as I find that, I feel like I'm living a new life. And then I'm like, right, what's next that I can do? So yeah, it's something that can be found in our daily lives.
Awesome. Now, you grew up in Eswatini, right? Which, for those that don't know, is a very small country in Africa. Maybe tell us what life was like growing up there and how that, influenced your definition or idea of adventure.
So Eswatini is a country, yes, it's very tiny. It was formerly known as Swaziland, and we're less than 1 million in population. I don't know what the new stats are, but it was always small.
It's small.
And I think it's a landlocked country, so again, no beach for us. But, growing up there, we always did still travel because it was so small and not everything was readily available. From young, we always had to travel to either Mozambique or South Africa to get, not basic necessities, but other essentials. So travel was always incorporated to us, I think, from a very young age. And it always brought a profound sense of adventure because it's very mountainous. It's a beautiful area, very calm, very scenic. I mean, we don't even lock our doors there. It's so safe. Yeah.
Wow. I cannot relate.
No, you should come. It's green. It's stunning. The people are so relaxed. Growing up there was such a breeze. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better experience growing up. I mean, at school, our detention, which I did have time to time, was literally be like, climb up that rock.
Oh, wow.
So you went for a hike for detention. It didn't sound so bad. So I think it was, it's such a relaxed country and there's so much available in terms of nature that it just forces you to go out exploring. And I think I've always had that instilled in me from a very young age.
Sounds incredible. So do you think because it's a fairly small country that almost inspired you to explore more of what's out there?
Definitely. Yeah, it sort of forced us.
It forced you. And obviously being surrounded by nature and the mountains, and stuff like that. Do you think that also had, an influence on the type of adventure you enjoy, like the outdoor activity? Or do you, enjoy kind of both? Museum visiting and like the climbing mountains when it's not detention?
Definitely. I think part of me will always crave that part of nature. I'll be very honest with you. Coming to Joburg, I just feel so tense at every single robot or traffic light. Whereas I don't get that back home. And, it's almost as soon as I get back home on the weekend, so I come on Fridays and I go back on Sundays, I have a sense of relief. It's just the mountains, the greenery, the fresh air, the trees. By the way, I live in a forestry area.
Wow.
So it is, I sort of crave that and it's part of me. So definitely when I do go to other countries, I'm always looking at how their nature is on that side. It can't be so different, but you do find differences in it. And I always crave that. Yeah.
I'm sure each like city and place has something unique to offer. So,
definitely.
I think you mentioned this a little bit before, but, adventure is not just about money. It's a mindset, right? And I think Helen Keller said it best that life is an adventure or nothing at all, right?
She was right.
What are some of the ways in which you find adventure for yourself in everyday life? So, you mentioned it doesn't have to be this grand or loud experience. It's having cheesecake for breakfast, right? So what are some of the ways, that you and your partner, your friends, how do you guys find adventure just in everyday life?
Look, I think it's easier than we put it out to be. We're just always so busy in our daily routines. We have a set routine, like get up, go to the office, breakfast, whatever it is. But I think, it's much easier than we do set it out to be, and we just need to stop and take a deep breath and connect to our like creativity. I mean, do something different. You change your gym routine, take your dog to a different park. It doesn't have to be expensive or time consuming for that matter. It's a moment where you can really like shift focus and sort of recalibrate. So when we're with our friends, I mean, we're not always together. I have friends I haven't met in over a year, which is terrible, but I'm still thinking of them. But I think it would just be to actually go out and have a good meal, catch up. And normally when you're together, it's like, I don't know if you've had that experience where you haven't met somebody in so long, and then the moment you're together, it's like you met them yesterday.
No, exactly. That's fantastic. And so like you're saying, it's just changing up your daily routine almost, right?
Yes, yeah.
How do you... So, the cheesecake story is something that's definitely going to stick with me. But like, how did you... adventure requires some courage. Lots of people are stuck in their routine. Like you say, we do this and this and this, and that's life. And then we go on holiday once a year, and that's our adventure. But how do we, what steps do we sort of take to find the courage to change our routine? What was it for you? Or did you always kind of grow up with, I want to try something new? And then that eventually just became your way of life almost.
Yes, so it is definitely the latter. I'm just an adventurous person. So for example, I think it's the minute something new comes up in a store, I feel like, and this is not just me, it's my family, like something new came up, we have to try it. And then we're just like, it wasn't so great. And again, adventure doesn't always have to have a positive outcome. It can be negative, but it's just part and parcel of it. So, I mean, you can go bungee jumping and poof, the cord snaps, but no.
That's why I've never been bungee jumping. Fun fact.
I am terrified, absolutely terrified of heights, actually. Yet I've done all these...
so much for jumping out the plane.
Yeah.
But you've done
jumping, it. Yeah, bungee jumping, canyoning, zip lining. Wow. I've done it, but it's, it's not something I look forward to. My palms are already sweaty just thinking about it. But yeah, and don't get me wrong, I cry every single time. But I do push myself to try and face that fear. And just going back to your question, I mean, it is sort of inbuilt, but it doesn't have to be. It can, like I said, it can start with the small things in bringing into your routine, like, trying out that new restaurant you see on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, or literally just reaching out to a friend and saying, hey, can we go out, or girlfriend or whatever it is. But it doesn't. It is inbuilt, but it doesn't have to be. You can set that little standard for yourself, and push yourself. I think everyone's perfectly capable of doing whatever they want, and it's only a mindset. It's a matter of mindset. And I feel in life that if you don't change something, life or the universe or whoever it is going to help you change it. And it's not necessarily going to be nice, but change isn't inevitable. So it's either you stand up and change what you have to do, or something will come and nudge you to change. I think just take initiative and be creative and,
No, 100% agreed with that fully. We touched on mindset, and you mentioned fear, and that your palms are getting sweaty when we mentioned, the bungee jump, anything with heights involved, really.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, so you also mentioned you push yourself, right? How do you manage to do that? Is it just like something that comes from within and you say, I have to try this? It's a fear of mine. And then, once you've done it, do you actually feel less fearful of that? Does it get easier almost? because in the beginning, it's very scary, right? I haven't bungee jumped. I don't think I'll be doing it anytime soon. And it's not because I have a fear of heights. It's that cord snapping that stops me.
It's your imagination.
and that's exactly it, right? So fear is literally the story we tell ourselves before anything's even happened. How do you manage to push yourself to do these things that you're so fearful of?
I think it's just, look, I'm always going to be fearful of heights, no matter what I do. Like I said, I will always cry, and at first I'll be like, I must do it. I feel like I'm gonna miss out if I don't do it, and I've got the opportunity. And that's another thing. You have to, if you're given the opportunity, you either take it or leave it. And for me, I hate living in a what if world. So for me, that's how I managed to push myself to say, but what if you actually enjoyed it? And believe it or not, how much I really hated bungee jumping, for example. But the minute you're in air and you're just hanging there, it is so exhilarating. I can't even describe the feeling. You feel like a brand new person, and all of a sudden, like, all your worries, all your tension, it becomes minuscule. Like, and I think that's what pushes me, is sometimes maybe it's for that feeling, but I have to obviously overcome a lot of crying and imaginative thoughts to get there. And
yes.
I would think that sort of pushes me to keep facing it. And I'm not just afraid of it. I'm afraid of lots of things. For example, the ocean. If I can't see the bottom, I'm imagining that shark from Jaws coming to gobble me up.
It's a scary place, trust me. I was fortunate enough to scuba diving, actually.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's still scary for me because you don't know what you're going to find down there. But I think what you mentioned, it's so profound, as this living in the what if, right? And we might not get a second opportunity to experience certain things. And not always, but sometimes that might be enough to push you to try. And again, I just want to come back to, it doesn't have to be something, grand and expensive. Trying a new restaurant. So again, like for me, I like to try new things. It does, especially with like food, as so being vegetarian, so we limit it already, but I like to try, and then it doesn't always turn out, and then I'm like, I should have just stuck with my usual.
What you knew, yes.
But it's the what if, right? And I think that's so important for all of us to take away and to remember. It's that question whenever we facing an opportunity to try something new. It's what if, it turns out to be great.
That's it. And ultimately, I do, and this is what I believe, I feel like we're all just souls out here to experience things.
100%.
And if you're not, then what is the point of living?
Exactly. It's what shapes us, right? Without our experiences, who would we be?
Would we be? 100%.
So something I want to touch on, and it goes hand in hand with adventure, is curiosity, right? And, curious people are always learning something new. Right, I think it's such an important trait for all of us to sort of cultivate, is curiosity. Is there something that you've learned about yourself, through all your experiences of travel and eating cheesecake for breakfast? Is there something that you've maybe learned about yourself through all of this that you never imagined possible if you, didn't try all of these things or travel to all these destinations?
Definitely. I am an overthinker of note. I assess everything in my mind, and it's not a quiet place. It never stops. Like, I could be sitting on a plane and I would be trying to imagine, okay, if this plane does go down, what is my plan? that actually, that is me, but I've been working on it. Before, I always wanted to be in control and plan everything to the last detail. And yes, I have always also been very curious from young, actually. That's how I got burnt, and that's how I got it hasn't led to too many pleasant experiences, but I have experienced great things as well due to it. So, you know, I think it's such a great quality for everyone to have. But, you know, just leading to what I was saying earlier is that, you know, you can plan all you want, but life doesn't work like that at all. You can plan to the T, and we keep learning this over and over again. And then when things don't go according to plan, you know, we ruin our whole day, you know, and because of that, you know, our ego then sort of takes control.
Yes.
And then really, who is the one that's really losing out then? So for me, you know, one of my favorite quotes actually is that I heard it from one of these guides in Bali, actually, when we went canyoning like deep in the forest, and he told me that, because let me tell you the full story.
Yes, sure, go for it.
So I'm like, you know, I'm very terrified of heights, and I'm like, I want to do this. I want to see deep inside this, you know, forest, and literally the bamboo there is huge. So yeah, there are snakes and everything there, but we'll forget that part.
Conveniently, yes.
But I started actually in the beginning of the line, and you go through, you know, a whole set of activities like jumping into this little waterfall, then you zip line, and then you start canyoning, which is like now you rappelling, going down these waterfalls, walking backwards down it, right? Which was very cool, but it gets quite high. So from somebody starting at the beginning of the line, I ended up towards the back of the line very quickly. So going back to what this guide said, because at some point I was like, I can't do this. And he's like, there's only one way out of this place, and it's down there. So we can sit here all day, but you'll have to face it at some point. And he said something so interesting to me, because I was just like, how do you do it like every day? And he's just like, the sun rises and the sun sets every single day, and it's up to you whether you want to be a part of it or not.
Wow.
And that has, you see, it still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, I looked down, I'm like, wow, okay.
And that quote has always stuck with me. So, you know, are you curious enough to go outside and see that sunset, or see what the sky looks like tonight, or, you know, how the stars are, whatever it is? It's, you know, it's always gonna be there. You know, it's up to you to take that initiative to go and see it or not. And, you know, for me, that's something I've learned about myself, is that, you know, I have to make the most of every situation, and I should stop overthinking it, because it's going to be what it's going to be, whether I like it or not. And just participate in life, you know, be present.
It's incredible. I mean, thank you for sharing that with all of us. And that's the thing, right, about travel. I think, I mean, not all of us will have this opportunity to visit these amazing destinations and learn from people from other countries. So I think that's why it's so important for people like yourself who, you know, come back and kind of share that with the rest of us. And hopefully we can all take that and carry it with us every day. I mean, I know I'm going to. I think it's, I looked down when you said that one. I'm like, sure, okay, maybe bungee jumping is not looking so bad anymore. I'm kidding, still not doing it. You know, you mentioned ego, and I want to touch a bit on that one. Do you feel like the more new experiences, you know, you kind of try out, the quieter the ego and the pride sort of gets, and it humbles you, right? And have you had that experience before, where you've just, you know, had something and then it sort of humbled you a little bit?
So I had one just recently, actually, in Spain, where I must research and plan everything. So there was a monastery that we found that was near this wedding venue we were at. So we said we'd do the monastery first. It's called Montserrat. And then we'd go to where the wedding venue was for our friends. And we had another couple with us, and we had planned everything to the T, and we were just like, okay, we'll go to this place first, and then we'll go and attend the wedding after. We'll make it in time. And I'm very like, everything's about time.
You've got your spreadsheet.
Yes. And I was just like, we'll catch the cable car at this time, and we'll be fine. So let's just see what we have to see, and then we'll come back. And clever me didn't read or see that the last cable car was at this time. So we missed the last cable car going down. And if this monastery's up in the mountain, and there's only the cable car service, which would be where we parked, or there was a train option. And I think my ego was in the sense where, I know what I'm doing. We've traveled so many times. We will catch the cable car and we'll be fine. We'll be there on time. And we missed it. So now we were stuck on this pathway. Well, we had two options. The one was to walk all the way down. And the second option was to take the train. So all my friends said, let's take the train, because now it would take us back to Barcelona, and then we would then have to find a way back to our car. We would take a train back to our car. And then I was like, no, guys, we're going to walk this. Like, it's going to be really cool, and it's just an hour, because I ended up asking everyone, and I'm like, we've got this. It's an hour. It will just save us, going up and down on a train. So we started walking. It started raining. And then they're like, let's turn back. I'm like, no, it's only an hour. And then we kept asking people, and eventually somebody's like, it's a 3-hour walk down.
Oh, that's insane.
So now we were even like, we were more in a mess than we were initially had I just listened to them. So I think, it was a very, that was my recent experience in terms of where my ego had kicked in and didn't serve me very well. And we were late. We missed this welcome dinner for our friend, which we regret a lot and were sorry for. It was my fault.
The truth comes out.
Yeah. But I think we have so many of those, so many. But the real question is, do we actually learn?
Yes, 100%.
And that's when you have to now take a step back and say, you know what? Let's just try your plan out.
Exactly. I think it's so important. Thanks for sharing that story with us. I think it also speaks to not just, like the ego and, you have these humbling experiences, but having these experiences also help us to understand ourselves better, I think. And then, through that, we're able to connect with others as well a lot better. It gives us perspective, right? I maybe talking about this mountain story of yours, something I was always fearful of when traveling alone was getting lost. And it happened to me when I traveled alone to Canada. So I traveled there thinking I would find myself. So, I just went through some stuff, and then I was like, people always talk about traveling by yourself to places, right? And I'm sure you've done that at some point. But I got lost, right? And it's a foreign country. Luckily, most people there speak English, but I was like panicked, and I was like, I can't do this. I just want to go home. Have you experienced that, like, getting lost in a place, and how did you overcome it? And did you learn anything about yourself through that experience?
Yes, actually. So you're going to find this extremely weird, but I got lost on purpose.
Incredible. This you have to tell us about.
So I was literally talking to somebody about something I was quite fearful about. I think it was when I started driving. And I was just like, I'm really fearful for just, Google Maps wasn't that accessible back then. But, I was driving, and I was just saying, I'm really scared I'm going to miss a turn. And I think it was affecting my driving too. So the person I was with literally told me, so what if you get lost? And I was like, a lot of things could happen, but you must remember Swaziland's a lot more safer than South Africa. So I don't recommend this to anybody, but I think it's just one of the things I went through. So he just said, get lost on purpose and you will see what will happen. And that's exactly what I did. I just started driving, but not somewhere hectic. It was still safe. So I started driving and I drove and I drove and I drove. And I didn't know where I was. And eventually, obviously you get through all the phases. First your fear kicks in. Like, what was I thinking? And then, Harshika, you can be so stupid. Why?
Yeah, all the negative self-talk stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Everything comes out. And then you almost get everything out. And then you come to a point where you're just like, okay, now I'm lost. But what am I going to do about it? And it was such an important lesson for me. I was alone. I was driving. I had fuel in my tank, so I was fine. I made sure.
Yeah. You didn't want to get that lost.
Yeah, not that bad. Like I said, but it was something I did on purpose to just see what happens. I am a quite daring person. I don't know if that's a good quality sometimes. But I did. I got lost. I drove around in circles. And then eventually I parked off. I had my little cry after I spoke so badly about myself. And then, I was like, okay, so now I'm lost. What am I going to do? And that's sort of when I feel like you start tapping into your subconscious and you stop letting your mind drive you. And now all of a sudden, I was just driving and I'm like, that looked familiar, I'm going to turn right. And that looked familiar, I'm going to turn left. And somehow, somewhere, see again, goosebumps. Somehow, somewhere, I eventually found my way back onto a familiar road I knew. And it just dawned upon me that you will be fine. You will actually be fine. No matter what you do, there is something to be learned. But you will survive. And if you don't, well, then you'll be reborn in your next life. You'll try again later. But, it's possible. And your mind is, I think, sometimes the only thing that holds you back, or the ego. But, like I said, I purposely put myself in that situation. And I'm glad I did, because I did learn a lot about myself that day. That no matter what I do, I will find a way out. And there is always a solution to any problem that you have. It's just a matter of time.
Agreed. I think, there's so much wisdom that you shared in just that story itself, right? So one is the importance of your self-talk, right? You said you obviously had to, talk yourself out of the negativity almost. Yes. And I think another important aspect is trusting yourself. I think in those situations, you don't have a choice, but you learn to trust yourself. And obviously that, then applies to life onwards. From that moment onwards, you just learn to trust yourself, because you'll always go back and say, wait, hang on, I got lost,
exactly.
And I did that and I got through it. So the self-talk is important, right?
Very. Maybe
just your own personal preference. Obviously in that situation, you were alone, right? Do you prefer actually traveling with someone, or do you, going with friends, or do you think the traveling alone thing is just as fun?
I think traveling alone is great if you want to learn more about yourself, and find out more about yourself. Not to say when you're traveling with somebody else that you don't. I enjoy traveling with my partner or my friends, because I just feel it adds so much more fun into the factor and more experience. It's almost like a whole huge packet that you get. And not to say like you won't learn as much. I mean, I think when you with a partner, you actually learn a lot more, because they can also point out things that you weren't aware of that you do. And in that sense, you learn more about each other. And it, even same applies with a friend if you're traveling with a friend. But I still also feel that traveling alone is sort of like the leap you need to do. If you want to go on that realization journey. So I do highly recommend, people do it at least once. And yes, I know sometimes it's not the ideal situation in certain families, but there's lots of platforms like Kontiki, and there's a lady that I know of, a really good friend. She actually hosts these things where she gets all these people, especially in the Asian community, all these single people to jump in with her, and she goes traveling around with her. So that's dose of travel.
Yes.
But there's so many ways around it. But like I said, it really depends on what you are looking for. If you don't always have to travel with somebody. I think the traveling is more about the country and yourself, more than it is about just like going out with friends and seeing things. I think there's a lot deeper meaning behind it.
It probably gives you time to self-reflect as well.
Yeah.
And maybe that's important to raise as well. Again, it doesn't have to be an overseas or like a destination sort of adventure. It can be as simple as taking a walk down your street or something, right? By yourself. I mean, obviously you're in a familiar place, but then it gives you time to be with your thoughts. And I think we need to do that more, because you'll learn a lot more about yourself when you spend time with your thoughts.
Definitely.
Just something I wanted to talk about, given, your amazing travel experience, is if there's one like cultural thing you feel you could bring back home, or you'd want to bring back home, and home, being South Africa or maybe Swaziland, what would that, one cultural aspect be, and where would it come from?
So I've mentioned Bali a lot on this trip, so I'm going to mention it one more time. So in Bali, I noticed as you walk past the streets, and I'm sure you'll experience this once when you go.
You convincing me.
So as you walk past the streets outside any shop, any home, you'll find like this little woven basket. And what they do is they take whatever food they have, and it's like an offering. And they put it in these little baskets and they leave it outside their house. And something so simple as that really touched me, because I realized, and this just walking, I think on the second last day, that nobody can go hungry in this country.
Wow.
Because even if it's a dog and he's hungry and he walks up to any house, there's food. Yeah, the same thing with a homeless person or a starving dog or whatever it is. It's something so simple, and I wish we all could do that here. Just a little bit of whatever left over, take it as an offering and leave it out, and whoever's hungry can grab it. Another little thing I want to share that I've saw recently in Swaziland is that there's this couple, and outside their house they've planted all these vegetables on the street. So it's literally whoever walks past and is in need of spinach or lettuce or whatever it is can simply just pluck it out and move on.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds amazing. Also sounds like lots of wisdom to be found in Bali.
Yes, yeah. So I really think that's something I could bring. If I could bring through, I would definitely do it. Yeah, and it's something so simple and achievable. But yeah, that really touched me.
No, I think it sounds incredible. It sounds like an amazing initiative, actually. Okay, so in closing, maybe we have our reflections segment. So for those listening in or watching for the first time, this is where we ask the guests to bring along something that has meaning to them. It can be an object, a quote, something that has had an impact on their journey or has influenced who they are today. So Harshika, I know you brought something that's very, very interesting. Something I'm going to be honest, I did not expect. which makes it even more special though, right?
Yes.
So I'm excited to learn about it. Maybe grab the object over and then describe it and then tell us the story behind it.
In my hand, I have a rock. Yes.
It must be a very special rock.
It's a very simple rock. And it is, for those listening, it is somewhat white in color, quite heavy. And it has little fossil
like markings
on it, yes. But it's not so much the actual object that is special to me. It's the meaning behind it. So I actually got this in Croatia when I was kayaking in Dubrovnik, I believe. And it was super special because I was talking to the guide and, I was looking for a pebble or something to take. So, fun fact, I always take a little piece of rock wherever I go to. So if you come to my house, you will find a whole shelf.
So it's not snow globes and clocks and magnets, it's rocks.
It's rocks. So he saw me looking and he's like, what are you looking for? So I'm like, I am looking for a rock because I'd like to collect a little piece of earth wherever I go to. So he said, wait till we get to shore. And he walked over to his office and he pulled us out of his office and he gave this to me. And he said, it's got little fossils on it, so I think you would appreciate it. And, it was the sweetest gesture, but that's why it's very special to me, because it's a complete stranger. And he didn't question why, a rock or, anything of that sort. But it was just a sweet, kind gesture. He probably didn't have much thought behind, but just sort of wanted to follow his heart. So, that's the story behind it. But why I collect rocks?
No, please do share. We need to know, because usually people collect, like I said, I've got a friend who's got snow globes and another one that does magnets. And rocks is a first for me. But I think, just the fact that you mentioned it's collecting a piece of earth, I think that in itself is so special, right? Something I never thought about.
It's weird. It is very odd, but
it's unique.
It's unique. We'll say it's unique.
Yes.
But the reason I do collect rocks wherever I go is because I believe rocks are a testament of time. Like you can see the fossils in these. Have a look.
Yes, I was waiting. I just it's, yeah.
It's a testament of time, and it's just a reminder to me that life is ever changing. And eventually, it will be sand. And it's a reminder that change is inevitable in all aspects of our life. And, you can be as solid and as hard as you want, but you need to learn how to go with the flow if you want to survive. And for me, I think it's just, water has shaped that the way it is. And it speaks to me and it just says that you must just learn to go with the flow, let it transform you into something beautiful over time. And, it goes back to what I was saying, where we are just souls here to sort of experience life. And, don't try and move against the force. Just flow with it and trust in it and believe in it, and you will be where you have to be. And this rock in Croatia now is in Eswatini.
Well, amongst all the other pieces of earth from the world. But I think this object that you brought with ties in everything so nicely together. And again, it's such a simple, I don't want to take away from it, but it's such a simple object, but the meaning behind it is pretty deep.
Yes.
I honestly didn't expect that. I'm blown away. So thank you for bringing that along. And also thank you for taking the time out from your busy schedule to be here with us and sharing all that you've shared. I've learned a lot. Definitely going to try cheesecake for breakfast. Before bungee jumping, at least.
You know, the funny thing with rocks, though, is that my poor husband's always complaining because we overweight, but he's like, not because of shopping, it's because my wife likes to collect rocks and she puts it in my bag.
Smart.
Yes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, Harshika. I've had a great time with you. I hope you have it as well.
Thank you for having me here. It was
welcome.
such an honor, and you've just wanted me to like go and book another trip somewhere.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.